Welcome to the 2021 Home Investment Partnerships Program Application Guidelines for the Community Housing Development Organization, also known as the Total Cycle. Presenter Michelle Grimes, DED's Housing Specialist for the Home and National Housing Trust Fund programs. Today's workshop, we will go over the Home Total application as an overview, review the application instructions, and look at some uploads and resources that you can utilize for your projects. I will also highlight some items of special interest that are different from last year's application and also do a deep dive into how the total funds can be utilized in their projects. The layout of the application is similar to last year with some changes to the questions. Ideally, up to this point, you have printed the application guidelines that are available online and have reviewed them. The guidelines are a resource to help you navigate the application. Overview of Home Total Program information. The Nebraska Department of Economic Development, also known as DED or the Department, Home Investment Partnerships Program, also known as HOME, is intended to address housing conditions related to community economic development needs, expand equal housing opportunities, create public and private partnerships to address housing needs holistically, linking housing with supportive services to promote economic self-sufficiency and family preservation, and to promote and advance the goals of the Nebraska's 2020 through 2024 Consolidated Plan. The state of Nebraska's HOME program is funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Developments, also known as HUD, Home Investment Partnerships Program. DED's role in home projects. As an investor, DED is seeking quality applications in order to select those projects that will provide the best investment of federal resources to help promote affordable housing. As a partner, DED is interested in providing input as early as possible in a project design and also working with the awarded applicants in order to address any obstacles they may encounter during project development and during construction. In order to apply for home funds, it is important for applicants to review the 2020 to 2024 Comprehensive Plan and the 2021 Annual Action Plan, along with the full application guidelines. The Department's Comprehensive Plan and Annual Action Plan can be found at this link listed on the slide. DED encourages potential applicants to review the application guidelines thoroughly, reach out to your DED program rep, check out the AmpliFund resources, the link is provided here. The HUD Exchange is another great resource. There's a link provided here, lots of trainings available. The state of Nebraska DED website on the home programs page, the link is provided here. We have updated the home manual and several revised chapters are now uploaded to our website. I highly recommend reviewing chapter 4, which goes over program income, total proceeds, and recaptured funds. And chapter 14 is the homebuyer activities. Having a conversation up front about your project and helping you through the creation of your project will be beneficial to you as an applicant. Reach out to your program rep or myself for any assistance. The application guidelines and the AmpliFund web links are listed here on this slide. When you do go online and pull up the application guidelines, the guidelines will also include these links to help you get into the AmpliFund system. Now we'll get into the allocations. For the 2021 home allocation, we have a total of $1,660,000 set aside for our total projects and our organizational operating. So the breakdown of the total projects, which would be your homebuyer activities, $1,560,000 has been set aside for that, and the top 3 highest scoring eligible applicants will be recommended for funding. Each eligible applicant can apply for a maximum activity grant, which is your homebuyer activities, in the amount of $500,000, and then in addition to that, the organization can apply for $20,000 in organizational operating to go along with your activity project, for a total of no more than $520,000 per project. Contracts will be for 24 months. Now this slide is a breakdown of just the total organizational operating of $100,000, which is a continuation of the previous slide. The home funds reserved for total activities through the total operating program is $100,000, with the two highest scoring eligible applicants being recommended for funding. The maximum grant amount request is $50,000. Your contracts will be for 24 months. DED reserves the right to fund or not to fund applications and to exceed the suggested maximums. So the funding cycle timeline. So today we've recorded the workshop, and in the near future we will be offering office hours, and we will email them out to our total applicants that have started their application, and we will have those on our website also, the dates and the times for those office hours. We just ask that you have reviewed the application guidelines, you've started your application in the AmpliFund system, you've reviewed the questions, you've reviewed the exhibits. So then during the office hours, we can go through a few topics, we can answer any frequently asked questions that have came in either by phone or emails. If you have a specific topic that you would like to cover, you can email them to me and we can be sure we answer those in the office hours, because if you're asking those questions, I'm sure other applicants have the same questions. And the office hours are going to be more of a one-on-one question and answer, so very informal, no set agenda. The AmpliFund system is new to our grantees and to our DED staff. We will have an AmpliFund assistant on the calls with us to answer any navigation questions. The full application deadline is September 30th by 6 p.m. Central Time. After 6 p.m., the system will not allow applications to be submitted past this time. No hard copy submissions will be accepted, and the anticipated award letters will be distributed in December. The eligibility and requirements are listed in the guidelines and also outlined in the AmpliFund application. Each applicant will need to go through the HUD total eligibility checklist to be sure the total meets the requirements or proper setup of the organization. So please review these in your guidelines and through the AmpliFund system. If you have any questions on the eligibility of your organization, please reach out to us. So the total requirements checklist, a full checklist is in your guidelines and also through the AmpliFund system. Every total applicant will need to complete the checklist in the beginning of the application process. So the existing totals will be recertifying and the new potential totals will be verifying that their organization is set up correctly. Other items in the checklist will include questions regarding the legal structure, independence, organizational structure, accountability to the low-income community. Each section you will need to answer and upload documents. The rule citation is listed to the right for any assistance and more explanation. Now we're going to review the home total program, cycle selection criteria and process. Up to this point, we've already discussed that the applicant will need to complete the total eligibility and funding application within the AmpliFund system. The deadline is September 30th by 6 p.m. Central Time. After that point, DED will conduct a threshold review of all the applications that have been submitted. A complete list of the threshold review is included in the application guidelines. We do encourage you to review that list to be sure your application meets threshold before submitting a full application. Clarifying information may be requested of applicants during threshold review. When providing clarifying information back to DED, applications may not be changed or altered. All home applications that meet threshold review can be considered for scoring and award. If eligible for total status, the applicant will be scored within the total program cycle with other eligible applications for home total program funds in the program year of 2021. DED intends to notify all applicants of approval or non-selection of the home total program funds in December of 2021. So the scoring for the two applications are listed here and also in your guidelines. So on the left shows the project scoring, the criteria, and the possible points for each section. And then on the right is your organizational operating scoring, the criteria, and the possible points for each section. Failure to meet a minimum score of 200 points will result in the application not being able to be funded through the program cycle. So the eligible applicants section. So we have discussed up to this point some eligibility for each CHDO, what criteria you need to meet. So the eligible applicants would be your community-based nonprofit 501c3s or 501c4s or Section 905 organizations. In addition to these organizations, they must meet and satisfactorily demonstrate and prescribe requirements in these guidelines. DED will determine if the nonprofit organization is eligible for CHDO as defined in the Home Partnership Program 2013 Final Rule, Subpart A 92.2. Applicants submitting a Home CHDO program application are not eligible to apply for a Home CHDO operating program application. Those are two separate applications. So your program application would be your home buyer activities, and then your Home CHDO operating would be your capacity building for a new CHDO organization or for a CHDO that wants to try a different activity and need the capacity or training for their staff. So eligible and ineligible activities. So the eligible activities for the project application would include any home buyer activity listed here. You can also refer back to Chapter 14 of the Home Manual to see what activity best fits your project. It also includes home buyer underwriting criteria that you'll want to review. So the different activities are assisting home buyers with purchasing newly constructed housing developed by the CHDO, assisting home buyers with purchasing homes that need rehab, which is called purchase, rehab, resale, developing new constructed affordable housing, and purchasing an existing building and rehabbing it for use of affordable housing. So if you have any questions on what activity is eligible or not eligible and you're not finding it or been able to pinpoint it in the guidelines or in the chapters, you can sure give us a call or reach out to your program rep and run your project activity through them. This slide shows our resources. Again, contact your DED program housing rep early in the process, and a link to the AMPLA fund is the next one. And then any questions regarding forms or the process, you can contact myself or Kylie Bischoff, our application coordinator. Her contact information listed here. What you're seeing now is the updated housing program representatives region map and a complete list of our housing team on the bottom with their contact information. Color-coded on the map is the regions for our program representatives, and on the bottom of the map you'll see who is your contact. The 2021 home application outline. So within the AMPLA system, it'll walk you through each one of these sections. So your first section that you have would be your opportunity details, and then your project information. And then it goes into the application forms, which part one includes your general information about your organization and lists out your certifying official. Part two would be your total eligibility and requirements. And this is where you'll find that checklist that we went over to make sure that your total is eligible and meets all the requirements. Part three would be your total project design and impact, which would be all your questions that we ask and then that you have to fill in, and where you upload most of your exhibits. And then it goes into your budget, performance plan, and then you hit submit. You only want to hit submit when you're completely finished with the application. So for the home total funds, your organization, there's two applications. One is for your home buyer activities and one is for organizational operating. So each application follows this outline. The best way to explain how the application is set up online is the table of contents of the application. The first part of the application is an overview of the home total program, such as the slides that we just went over. You will go through the process of certifying and recertifying your organization. The operating application instructions will refer back to page 19 of the guidelines to go through the instructions that are duplicated for both your project and then also for the organizational application. After the application is completed, the budget and performance plan will follow. Now we're going to get into the home buyer application. So this is your project design. This year we've consolidated all the information we want to know about your project design into one big text box. So for this, you have up to 150 possible points, about 4 pages that you can type into the text box. We do want you to be sure you answer or include in your narrative all the items that we've listed here. I bolded what needs to be uploaded, so you don't forget to do that. And if you have other items that you want to include as an upload, there is a section in the application for additional uploads. But please, if you do that, I want you to refer in your narrative that you do have additional items in that section that you're uploading. So the needed impact section, there are 4 bullets, and each bullet you'll have a text box, which is about a half a page, up to 100 possible points for this section. We just want to make sure that you, in your narrative, describe the need that you're filling and the impact that your project will have. The project financing, we did consolidate some of these again under describing your overall project financing is in one big text box. So you have about 3 pages or 9,900 characters to be able to tell us how you're going to finance your project. We do want you to provide commitment letters of all sources, all other sources in the project to make sure that this project is ready to go. We do want to see that you do have commitments for all those sources. And then for your organizational operating funds, that's another section. Your character limit is 3,300, and which is about a page, and just explain to us how you're going to utilize the organizational operating funds within your project. The collaboration section has a possible points of 75. Listed here are the 4 different sections, and each section or each bullet will have its own text box, which is about a page each that you can fill in. The capacity section is up to 100 possible points. Each bullet is a page, about 3,000 characters. So in the Amplifund system, we are not able to emphasize any special characters. So here I made sure that in the guidelines that I had underlined and bolded a few things to make sure that in your narratives that you do touch on it. We highly recommend that you touch on the things that are underlined. So we do want to know who the key players are and their responsibilities in your project. We want to know the staff responsibilities and capacities during the housing development, and the board and staff, how do they work together, and so on. So just make sure that you cover those things that are underlined under each bullet. Listed here are the appendixes and exhibits that are required with your application. Within the application guidelines, it does have a definition, explains these exhibits a little more. Within the Amplifund system, there are templates and examples of items that we do need as exhibits or appendixes that need to be uploaded into the system. Now we're going to move into the Home Total Organizational Operating application. This is separate from your home buyer activity that we just went over. This is an application that is strictly just for Choto, operating for capacity building of a Choto, to be able to come in with a housing home buyer activity after this 2 years is over. This is to help build your capacity in your organization, hire new staff, set up a new home buyer activity, and so on. So your contract amounts and contract period, the home funds reserved for the CHDO operating program is $100,000, with the two highest scoring eligible applicants being recommended for funding. The maximum grant amount request is $50,000. If awarded a CHDO operating grant, the CHDO organization will not be expected to have the capacity to have a CHDO project within 24 months from receiving the CHDO operating grant. Contracts will be for 24 months. Now we're going to get into the questions for the CHDO organizational operating application. So this is part 3 of the operating design and impact, starting off with the need, which is up to 200 points, and then your character 6,600, which is about 2 pages. So under this is one bullet that you answer all of these items here under the need. So the impact on housing need, you have up to 100 possible points. Your character limit's about half page when you type it out. And each bullet will have its own text box here on the impact on housing. Sustainability, up to 100 possible points. Your character limits is 2,000, about half a page for each bullet here. Financial management, up to 100 possible points. Each bullet here, it has their own text box. Be sure to upload these items here listed and refer back to page 24 to 25 for any explanation of exhibits. Also included in the application guidelines is the comparison of program income, total proceeds, and recapture funds requirements. This is a very helpful chart to be able to determine what your proceeds, if you'll have program income or if your project will have total proceeds, and if it'll have recapture funds and the differences. You can also refer to the home manual, which is uploaded to the NDED website and has more detail on each one of these items. Now we're going to get into the total funding reconciliation and the differences between each item here listed. So the total funds are allocated to NDED as APJ for development of units. So it comes from HUD to the state. And then it can be used as development subsidy, which is eligible development costs in excess of sale price, which is the fair market value, are also known as the appraisal gap. So most projects spend more than they can sell the project for, especially if it's new construction, and somebody has to be accountable for the difference. And HUD calls this as a developed subsidy, written off and not passed through to the buyer. So excess costs are not recoverable. This is called development subsidy. Your buyer subsidy is assistance used to help the low-income buyer purchase the property, also known as the affordability gap. The pass-through assists from the developer, additional home DPA at closing, which is limited to 10%. So the buyer subsidy are any funds from home source that have been used to help the buyer purchase the property. The difference between the sales price plus closing costs plus any money brought to the table, which is the first mortgage and any cash contribution. The affordability gap or the buyer subsidy used to bring in, we used to call this down payment assistance. That can still be done, but there is a limit of the new money at closing, and then that will trigger resale provisions and not recapture. Drawing money against development costs and then the sale to the buyer, the funds are already expended. They just pass through the home funds as buyer subsidy at closing. And only what is needed is what is put into the deal. Home funds passes through the development, through your activity, and then to the buyer. And then whatever is captured at the end is called total proceeds. So the net proceeds from the sale of the home that you receive from buyer cash and the first mortgage are the funds that are left over. This can be used for the next total unit in the current project or used for low-income housing approved by NDED in future projects. Home funds never lose their federal ties. So this slide shows you a different way of how the home funds flows through the project, different than the previous graph slide. So this graph is the different ways, 3 different ways that the home funds flow through the project. So your home buyer assistance and or your development subsidy most likely won't be the same for each home buyer depending on the home buyer activity, and the construction cost. So at the time to sell, you have the market value, and then you have a development subsidy or possible appraisal gap. So the home sells for less than what it's the cost to build or develop, and the difference is the development subsidy or appraisal gap, which is permissible to use the home funds for. And at the closing table, the buyer brings the first mortgage and cash to close, usually not enough. So now we have another gap to fill, which is the affordability gap, or we call a buyer subsidy. So the combination of the pass-through from the original cost, the home funds went in at the beginning, and now it's being passed through or flowed through the project as your buyer financing. To meet the home rules, we need to spend first in the development and then to the buyer at closing. So then at closing, we pay off all other advances such as line of credit, construction loans originally spent. What is left over is in the gray box labeled program income or total proceeds. So the total organization during the project review will determine if they will be returning the program income back to DED or they will be utilizing total proceeds, which is also approved by DED, in their current project to develop more units or in future projects be used for other low-income housing needs. So on the blue, home on the left is now in 3 parts of the development. Some pay for development subsidy, pass through the development to the buyer, and then flow back to the organization as total proceeds. Development subsidy gets written off. The buyer assistance or subsidy is determined with the buyer's note and mortgage. The total proceeds collectively is how we reconcile the use of the home funds. So your buyer subsidy is what is determined with the buyer's note and mortgage affordability period. Your development subsidy gets written off and proceeds come back to the organization, and the buyer subsidy is the only responsible for the buyer, and the buyer is only responsible for the buyer's subsidy. Again, the development subsidy gets written off, the buyer subsidy stays with the unit or the home buyer, and there's usually a note and mortgage on that amount, and then your total proceeds comes back. So the state monitors the first reuse of the proceeds and where they will be utilized when the project is all done. So when you go into another project, or if you reuse the total proceeds in the same project, we will want to see where that is flowing into. Again, refer back to your home manual on explains this in more detail on your recapture and how the money flows through. And again, we'll go over all this in office hours if there are any additional questions. This concludes our walk through the 2021 home total application. We will soon be posting the office hours online, and there will be an hour that we will be available to ask questions, or if you have need any assistance through the AmpliFund program. If you need assistance prior to those office hours, please reach out to your program rep or myself, either through an email or give us a call, and we will be sure to get you assisted. Have a great day and stay well.